This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 804, recorded on Wednesday, December 16th, 2020. TWIS, the season to hibernate? Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on the show, we will fill your head with sparkles, specks, and faces. But first, thanks to the Burroughs Welcome Fund and our Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. You can become a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/thisweekinscience.
Disclaimer. Seeking knowledge is a natural, ingrained human trait. The availability and access to information these days is unlike any other time in history, but seekers of knowledge must be wary, for not all information is knowledge, and too often information is used to mislead, intentionally, willfully, and with purpose. This practice is an ancient one. Greenland isn't green. It got that name from a Viking who was trying to get more people to join his icy settlement that ended up badly. Every religion you can think of tried to point to the one that is evidence-based, one that, in the light of scientific knowledge, may have shrugged its shoulders and conceded to reality on any number of points. These are beliefs that cannot be refuted by facts. And in politics, honesty, while scarce, spin, propaganda, tools of the trade, we know. False beliefs that cannot be refuted by facts. Amongst the loyal, there's no accident. It is engineered. Why do they do it? Because it works. Deceit is a path to money, fame, and power for some. There are the criminal-minded ones that we're familiar with, the Ponzi schemes, tax frauds, real estate phone scams. We expect these people to wind up in jail eventually. But there are also those whose business it is to misinform. Worse than that, they seek to make you immune from facts. And it's working with great result. We see it in over 300,000 dead Americans from COVID-19. We see it in decades of gun violence, discrimination, criminalization of poverty, and we're watching as the climate is compromised to the point of no return. All of this continues as long as people have false beliefs that cannot be refuted by facts. There is no substitution for real knowledge and experience in this world, which is why we bring you reports from those who have it. Here on This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back again to talk about the science, all three of us. This is our last episode before we take a very short holiday break.
Okay.
We will not be here next week, but we return before the new year with our top 11 of 2020. The top 11 countdown is our next show in 2 weeks. I hope y'all are ready for that. Are you ready, co-hosts? Are we ready?
I mean, I just want to make sure it's not all COVID.
I don't know. There's more science. No.
I just want to make a promise to everyone, if you guys are okay with that it won't all be about COVID.
I think that's a very good promise to make.
Okay, great.
It can't be all about COVID. I mean,
Hey,
wow.
Look, if you're interested in This Week in Science without COVID, we are at 804 episodes.
Oh, yeah.
You can probably dial back, just not that far, over the many, many years we've been doing this and find episodes packed full of information you might have just missed at the
750
time.
something without COVID for sure.
Right.
But this week, we've got our COVID update like we normally do, because that's what it seemed. There's a lot of science about that this year, but we have other science, and I have stories about extinctions, touch. Got a story about touch and computer coding and where you do that in your brain.
Ooh, it's interesting.
I don't code in my brain, do I?
Is that
Well,
language
computer
center?
coders.
Is that math center? Well,
Great
that's a great question. Yeah.
Great question.
That's
And
very
science
interesting.
has figured it out. Yes. Justin, what did you bring for the show?
I've got less hurricanes, but not in the necessarily good way. Oldest, furthest galaxy ever.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah. Stop blaming the Mongols, and we might need to start learning about Mond. That's all about
Mond.
Mond.
Yes. We've talked about Mond on the show before.
We brought
I'm
some
not gonna
Mond.
I'm not gonna talk it up right now. You can talk about it when you talk about that story.
Yeah, talk about it when you talk about it, Justin.
We're teasing
I'll talk
Mond
about it when I want to talk about it, which is when I talk about it.
when you
Okay.
talk about it.
Great. I'm glad we got
Blair,
that sorted out.
what's in the animal corner?
Oh, I have spiders in space and fish talking on their own AM radio station.
What?
It's, we'll talk about it when we talk about it.
But wait, I want to talk about that one right now. I want to know right now. What's
Mhm.
this about? They have their own frequency that they can talk through the water, and it's like an AM radio, but
I mean,
Electric
we're going
lines?
to talk about it when we talk about it. And
We'll talk
I don't know
about it when
how
we
else
talk
to tell
about
you
it.
that.
Which might be during Blair's Animal Corner?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, so you
Perhaps.
got to wait for that one. But let's jump into all these fun stories so we can talk about these things that we want to talk about and get to the point when we talk about them. If you are not yet subscribed to This Week in Science, you can find us everywhere podcasts are. You can find us in the Google Podcast Play area. You can find us in the Apple Podcast area, Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora, the radio.com, all over the place. You can find us. Look for This Week in Science. You can also find us on YouTube. That's where we broadcast live, as well as on Twitch. We are at Twist Science, TWISCIENCE, Twist Science on Twitch, and on Facebook. We also broadcast live there as well. Again, look for This Week in Science. You can also go directly to our website, twist.org, to find out more about any episode. All right, calendars. I have mailed things out. From this point on, we cannot promise any more calendars arriving before the Christmas holiday, but calendars are on their way to those who have ordered them so far. If you would like a 2021 calendar, they are still available, and they will be until supplies run out. So get your calendar today. They are at twist.org. Click on the Horny Frog link. All right, you guys ready for the science?
So ready.
So ready. We were born ready for the science. All right. My first story is about evolution. We talk a lot about evolution, and we've talked about extinction events, and you might have heard us, and maybe in school or in your own exploration of evolution, you may have heard of things like about the KT boundary, where a bunch of organisms died and then new organisms radiated out, and potentially the dinosaur extinction that made room for mammals to adapt and grow and take up all the habitats that dinosaurs had been taking up until that point. And that led to humans. Yay! And so when we think about evolution, we normally think, all right, it goes along at its kind of normal pace, and then you have a big extinction event, and that makes room for organisms, and then you have what's called radiation. And so in our minds, we tend to pair extinctions with radiations. First the extinction, then the radiation of species. Because you have space, species can take over. Well, some researchers decided they were going to use artificial intelligence to look at the patterns, just look at all the data in extinctions and adaptations and radiations over the years. Scientists at the Earth Life Sciences Institute at Tokyo Institute of Technology used machine learning to examine the co-occurrence of fossil species. They found that, dun, 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 extinctions and radiations are not connected. It happens sometimes, but generally not so much. That more often, they're completely separate.
Well, wait a second. So I guess it may be some sort of a problem in terms or in timing, and when you were, because obviously there have been many extinctions. big extinction events.
Yes.
And obviously, there is life everywhere.
Yes.
So life must have at some point radiated everywhere, or does radiated have to be like you do it fast? Like, I mean, after that extinction, life just moseyed into every niche and biome.
Slowly made its
that was there.
way. Yeah. Well, the idea was that we've had is creative destruction. And this is the concept of evolution, really, that you have destruction, extinction, and that allows the creativity of evolution to take over. But the data does not support that at all. They compared the impacts of extinction and radiation across the Phanerozoic eon. It represents from about 550 million years ago to the present day. And this is where we have fossils in the fossil record. And before this, there weren't really any fossils, so there was nothing really to look at. And so looking at all these fossils, what they found is that many of the remarkable periods of radiation, like you're saying, Justin, kind of this moseying, it occurred when life entered new evolutionary and ecological arenas. So there was also the Cambrian explosion of animal diversity. There was the Carboniferous expansion of forest biomes, and this did not rely on extinction events.
This is going to be a hard one for me to unlearn.
I know.
Just because everything we understand about like empty niches and how that creates like a vacuum that animals then are trying to figure out the best way to use that niche. Like that is fundamental to a lot of how I understand life progressed. And, mammals, right? The whole thing was that these mammals were little shrew things. And then once the dinosaurs were gone, they came upstairs.
That's right. Here you are.
There's nobody up here. Come on up.
I mean, there was that to an extent, but to Justin's comment from before, it's the time scales that we're talking about were so large that this radiation took place over a long, long period of time. And all the radiations that have happened took place over hundreds of thousands to millions of years. Geological timescales are hard for the human mind to wrap itself around, and we like these tidy stories. And just from the machine learning perspective, the artificial intelligence does not see the same pattern that we have decided was there. Yep.
Well, yeah.
And so what they're coining a new term. They're calling destructive creation instead of creative destruction. They found that in the Phanerozoic era, species that made up an ecosystem at any one time are almost all gone by 19 million years later. And then when these extinctions or radiations happen, the turnover is a lot faster. So these extinctions and radiations drive a lot of species turnover. And there's a real question right now to do with this new era that we are entering, the Anthropocene, and this sixth extinction that has been suggested is that it's eroding biodiversity that was already disrupted, but it will take at least 8 million years for the biodiversity to revert to the average of 19 million years of disappearance. So we are erasing things a lot faster than they would normally be erased.
Yeah, and you don't get them back.
No.
That's the crazy thing. There would have been. I think the mammals would have done okay, Blair. We would have been able to come upstairs very, very reasonably soon if the asteroid had missed.
It might have come upstairs anyway.
Well, no, because there was a
niche,
global
right?
there was a global ice age that was coming anyway. And there were dinosaurs in the Canadian tundra where you were looking at polar bears a while back. That's not a place you would think dinosaurs could survive. Why? The climate was tropical up there. There were alligators, crocodiles or something in Montana. So
there's challenges now that we've talked about on the show that say that dinosaurs might have been somewhat endothermic. So
yeah, dinosaurs they were big. They could just have internal heat just based on their size. However, there were also the climate was tropical. I mean, there was plant life and the like in Greenland, swampy alligators living in Montana. Like, it was a different climate. Once that all got cold, and you had this suddenly, maybe, perhaps inaccessible to some smaller dinosaurs, maybe. Couldn't go into handle the cold weather. Little furry mammals would have had to find time and could have radiated that way.
I want to radiate to your story that comes up next. Justin, what story do you have to tell us?
I have a story about high-resolution supercomputer simulations.
From artificial intelligence to supercomputers? We're so techie today.
I know. This is in the journal Science Advances. It's looking at global warming, and it finds that global warming will reduce the number of hurricanes in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Yay! Unfortunately, there are no hurricanes in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Technically, they have typhoons,
cyclones,
and tropical cyclones. Mm-hmm. Right. But other than that, they're exactly the same thing as the hurricanes that hit the U.S. South and East Coast every year. Those numbers are going to be going down in that area. It's different ocean, there's different dynamics going on. They're predicting a reduced number. This is out of South Korea's IBS Center for Climate Physics at Pusan National University. Ran their computer model simulations for present-day atmospheric gas composition, and then doubled and quadrupled CO2 concentrations over time. They ran for 13 months this simulation on one of South Korea's fastest supercomputers named Aleph. It's generated the equivalent of 2,000 1-terabyte hard disks of data. It's a really big number. Lots of bits.
That's a lot of data. Mm-hmm.
And they found, overall, they're gonna be experiencing less hurricanes, typhoons, and tropical cyclones. However, the ones that they do experience looked to be bigger, stronger, and will travel further inland because they will be much higher rated, numbered, So, worse hurricanes in the India, South Pacific area, but less of them overall.
All right. So, I mean, it's good news, bad news, good news?
It's bad news, because like the smaller ones you can handle. And then actually then they also cranked the thing up to like 11. Just see what would happen. Like, if these silly humans like really, really don't learn, and we double or quadruple it again, what happens? And what they saw was this interesting effect of a suppression of hurricanes. They started to become suppressed. They started not to form. What ended up happening instead, though, was you just had torrential downpour everywhere all the time. So
there's a trade-off, for sure.
There's always a trade-off, because the energy in the water is going to stay somewhere. If you take it all out of the ice, it's going to be in play somewhere in the world.
Yep, somewhere. And just to tack on to this story, there's another story in the news about just how much carbon dioxide plants can take. Right, and we might be hitting the maximum for how much carbon dioxide plants can absorb and use. We're getting there. We're almost a peak plant. That's right. Woohoo! Let's do something, Blair.
Yeah.
What news do you have for us?
Oh, well, I have a way that we can get more clean water, so that's some good news.
I knew you had something positive.
Does it have anything to do with melting icebergs?
Well, no, it actually has to do with nanodiamonds, so I don't know how achievable this is, but let's explore. So,
nanodiamonds, we could make those.
Yeah, totally. So, oil recovery methods and other industrial processes make really, 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 really hot wastewater. And so the problem is, not only do you have to clean it, but you actually have to cool it before you clean it. Then you clean it through osmosis membranes. Then you have to heat it up again before it can be considered reusable. So all that to say, that's a lot of energy, and that's a lot to go through to decontaminate water. And the way to get around that potentially is with nanodiamonds. So researchers have previously explored a little bit with embedded tiny nanodiamonds, which are carbon spheres produced by explosions in small closed containers without oxygen. And they put those on these membranes. And in these previous studies, they effectively and quickly filtered large volumes of water, but they didn't test with the hot water, which is really the thing here. How can we effectively, quickly filter water without cooling it down just to heat it back up again? And so this research team they attached amines to the nanodiamonds, bathed them in ethyl acetate solution to prevent them from clumping, and then added a monomer that reacted with the amines to create chemical links to the traditional membrane base. And so they found thicker, more temperature stable membranes, which had an improvement in their performance. So by increasing the amount of these amine enhanced nanodiamonds in the membrane, they had better filtration rates. And this was even after 9 hours at 167 degrees Fahrenheit. So it seems promising to get some nice clean water.
It does seem promising. And, I did say we can make nanodiamonds, and it's true. Synthetic diamonds are easily made, actually. And that's the kind of thing that we can use our technology to do. So this is something, diamonds come from carbon. Carbon is plentiful. Maybe we can take the carbon dioxide in the air and take the carbon out of that and turn it into nanodiamonds and use it to clean the water.
The question is the energy used to create the nanodiamonds still less than the energy it takes to cool the water down and then heat it back up again?
This is a good question. Yes.
I would guess that in the long run,
I'm going to
yes.
say no.
I would say, if you can mass produce the nanodiamonds and they can be used over and over, then this could potentially be a benefit. But in the short term, I feel like it's probably not an improvement.
Yeah, they'd have to be reusable for it to. Yeah.
Reusable diamonds. They're the toughest thing ever. What's more? It's got to be reusable, right? Reusable nanodiamonds, I would imagine. Just wash them off. Use them again. It'll be good. Yeah. You know what we wash off and use over and over and over again?
What?
Our faces.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say something gross.
No, I don't have anything gross to say. I just want to talk about the human face. I want to talk about the wonderful face that we share around the world. And researchers decided, again, yes, they're using technology, using artificial intelligence to determine how often these faces, these facial expressions that we use to express emotion, how often they are used similarly around the world. It's published in today's issue of Nature, and the researchers from UC Berkeley say the study reveals how remarkably similar people are in different corners of the world in how we express emotion in the face of the most meaningful contexts of our lives. This was a worldwide analysis of facial expressions from UC Berkeley and Google. They used machine learning technology, a deep neural network, to analyze 6 million video clips on YouTube for facial expressions. These people were in countries around the world, 144 different ones. And this is the first time that they have really looked at what was happening. So they used the machine learning to determine all of the different expressions that are associated with 16 different emotions that they defined. So shock, awe, happiness, a bunch of different things. The machine learning was looking at the position of the faces related to all of the different muscles that create these looks. And then in addition to just identifying the facial expression and tying it to a particular emotion, they then compared that to the context in which the video was taking place. So watching fireworks, for example, people dancing, or whatever you could imagine, these different scenarios that were taking place in videos. What were people looking like? What emotions were they expressing, and how in the videos? And did the facial expressions line up around the world. And lo and behold, yes, they did. Yes, they did. The expressions that they looked at, they pretty much found that there were nuances in facial behavior, but they're all similar around the world. Our emotions are similar in similar situations: awe during fireworks displays, contentment during weddings, concentration, the furrowing of the brow when performing a physical task, doubt at protests, pain at weightlifting or other physical work. All these faces show how completely similar that we are as humans. And the researcher Dasher Keltner says this supports Darwin's theory that expressing emotion in our faces is universal among humans. The physical display of our emotions may define who we are as a species, enhancing our communication and cooperation skills and ensuring our survival. So even as we feel so divided around the world, we can look at each other and know that we can understand each other, at least in our faces.
Yeah. I really living abroad. Nonverbal communication was a big deal for me.
Yeah.
I got very good at it by the end of my 6 months. And facial expressions are a huge part of it. I wonder if you couldn't see someone's face that you're trying to communicate with, if you didn't share their language, but you could still like act things out, would it be as effective? And I don't think so.
Acting things out works. People use body language, improvised sign language all the time.
It's part of it, I think, is my point. I feel like it was a very important piece of the puzzle for me, for sure.
Justin, want to give us another story?
This is a team of Tokyo University astronomers used Keck 1 telescope to measure the distance of an ancient galaxy. They deduced that the galaxy GN-Z11 is not only the oldest galaxy, but is the most distant, which also kind of makes sense, because wouldn't that be the way that, well, it would be the oldest to us anyway. But it is the oldest and the most distant. Oldest meaning perhaps closest to the original thing that might have happened that made it so that it was space instead of nothing. So the distance it defines is a very boundary of our observable universe. Beyond that, I guess it's just darkness, blackness, void. Can't see anything. Nothing's making it through yet. Team hopes the study can shed light on a period of cosmological history when the universe was only a few 100 million years old. So here's a galaxy in our universe that's a galaxy. The universe is only a couple 100 million years old at this point. That's when we're talking about these mass extinction events, and we're talking about covering hundreds of millions of 500 million years, was it, from the KT event? There was a whole galaxy that had radiated and was caught in its own orbit. Must have probably had a black hole in the middle. I don't know. Professor Noburani Kashikawa from the Department of Astronomy at the University of Tokyo, driven by his curiosity about galaxies, sought out the most distant one we could observe to find out how and when it came to be. This is quoting voice of Kashikawa. From previous studies, the galaxy GN-Z11 seems to be the furthest detectable galaxy from us, at 13.4 billion light years. Yeah, and it is 134 nonillion kilometers. For those who aren't familiar with that,
that's really far.
Yeah, 134 nonillion kilometers is approximately the same as 134 decillion meters. It's 134 by 33.
Thank you so much for that.
According to Kashikawa, measuring and verifying such distance is not an easy task. They measured the redshift of GN-Z11. Redshift being the way that light stretches out, becomes redder the further it travels. But they also had to look through certain chemical signatures called emission lines that imprint distinct patterns in the light from these very distant objects. By measuring how stretched these telltale signatures are, they could figure out how far the light must have traveled, and it gave them a distance for the target at that many zeros. It's a 134 followed by 30 zeros if you're doing the kilometers. It's a lot of zeros.
That's a lot of zeros. I'm just thinking, just for a quick moment though, 13.4 billion light years away. That is that's about 3 times the age of our solar system. We're at about 4.5 billion years. So our solar system could have come up 3 times in the time that this one galaxy.
If you had a starship going warp 10, it would take you 1.3 billion years to get there.
Yeah.
Well, but at warp 10, you start time travel. So that's all. It's 9.9. Warp 9.9.
So I think isn't warps a factor of speed of light?
I don't know.
I believe so, except that warp 10 is funny. Just if you're following the real canon and the lore, it's a whole. Never mind. It's a whole thing.
It's a thing. It is.
This ship goes
at warp 10, you are everywhere all at the same time.
Yeah, I think that happens every time. It's just more noticeable then.
Okay.
But yeah, okay. So they looked specifically at ultralight, at the area electromagnetic spectrum, expected to find the redshift chemical signatures. According to Kashikawa, the Hubble Space Telescope detected the signature multiple times in the spectrum of GN-7 or Z11. Excuse me. However, even the Hubble cannot resolve ultraviolet emission lines to the degree we needed. So we turned to a more up-to-date ground-based spectrograph, an instrument to measure the emission lines called MOSFIRE, which is mounted to the Keck 1 telescope in Hawaii. MOSFIRE captured the emission lines from GN-Z11 in detail, which allowed the team to make a much better estimation on its distance than was possible from previous data. Pretty amazing. Farthest and oldest galaxy, and it doesn't even have like a really catchy name. GN-Z11. It's all right. I guess you can sing it. You sing it out.
Yeah, you can sing it out. I mean, it's the season of Elf. You know, hi, I love you, love you.
Fada,
you can turn anything into a song. It's okay. Yeah. It's that season.
It is. Fada in the chat room. Blair, at warp 10, you devolve to a salamander and have egg babies with your captain.
Yes, that's the episode where that happens, and that's why, because you're at all places and times at the same time, so you de-evolve. It's a whole thing. I'm just telling you.
The lore and the canon.
The theory behind warp goes completely off the rails and to every space in time in that particular episode. That's the whole thing.
Is that just because they didn't have their...
Warp 1 is light speed, though.
Yeah.
Just didn't have the Heisenberg dampeners on. That's all.
That's right. You gotta dampen the uncertainty.
Uncertainty principle dampeners. They had to have those. They must have been faulty.
You know where there's not a lot of uncertainty? Where? Computer code.
Oh, computer code.
Computer code, yes. Mm. And while people learn various languages in which to program, there's been this way we think about it. It's a language, computer programming. You read the computer programming language. And so researchers wanted to know, does our brain treat computer code like a language or something else? So they studied it. Yes, they did. Researchers published in eLife this week Evelina Fedorenko, the Frederick A. and Carol J. Middleton Career Development Associate Professor of Neuroscience and a member of the McGovern Institute for Brain Research, is the senior author on this paper. And also there were researchers from MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory and Tufts University. In the study, they used functional magnetic resonance imaging, and the researchers showed people snippets of code, little bits of code, and asked them to read it, to say, okay, you read this code, what will the code do? What's it going to produce? What is that code for? And when they were looking at the brain, looking specifically in the language regions of the brain, we do have language centers of the brain that allow us to understand language and produce language. That's not where activity was happening. No. Computer programming code is not a language to our brain, even though we might mentally consider it that way. It's metaphor, really, because the coding task mainly got involved in what's called the multiple demand network. And this is in the frontal and parietal lobes in the brain and is needed when you are holding lots of information of different kinds in your brain at the same time. So when you're solving puzzles or when you are doing crossword puzzles, really, there are lots of skills that take on this multiple demand network, but it is in relation to skills, to things that take lots of different kinds of information. So math and coding, you said, may ask this, Justin, earlier, whether it was a math center. And math and coding rely on the same brain areas and possibly mechanisms.
I was picturing the way that I don't code, but I do a little bit of web editing, and I'm not formally trained at all. And so I have to kind of use it. I think it's the same part of my brain actually that I would use in an escape room. Is like, if I do this, then this happens, but I do this, then that happens. So in order to get this, I need to do this and this and that and this and that. Did it work? No. Okay, let's try that again.
Do it again.
Yeah. So that's totally, that's where I feel like my brain is at when I'm doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So this in itself, because there's not a specific area of the brain that is like, this is the coding area of the brain. So there's no real answer as to yet as to how what the best way to teach coding is, because we can approach coding as a language, but we have to understand that the brain is not interpreting it as a language. So should it then be taught as a problem-solving tool? What are the best methods for future education in coding? And how can we teach it most effectively? And that's the big question moving forward. And maybe it is somewhat like math. You just got to do a lot of it. Practice makes perfect. But I find it very interesting. Puts that question to rest. Coding. Nope. You're not learning a language. I think people will still use the metaphor, though.
Oh yeah,
well,
for
then,
sure.
Well, then code makes sense, but language doesn't anymore.
Yeah,
I think it's fair to call it a code.
Yeah, it's code.
Instead of a coder, you should call yourself a code breaker.
No, cryptographer? Cryptographer. I just went to Cryptonomicron. So anyway, it's time for me to tell you, if you just tuned in, you are joining This Week in Science. This Week in Science is a weekly science program. We talk, we have fun, we enjoy curiosity. If you are interested in an item of our merchandise, please check out our Zazzle store at twist.org. Click the link, Zazzle, and you'll be able to find our store where there are all sorts of wonderful items that will help support this show moving forward and make you feel pretty cool, because you'll have some Twist gear. That'll be pretty awesome. Yep. All right, you ready for the COVID update?
Yeah, let's have it. Hopefully there's something good this week.
It's all good. It's all good. I've only got good news. I didn't bring any bad for you.
Hooray.
Does that, Kiki, does that mean that there isn't any bad news?
No, it just means the stories I brought are all good news.
Okay. Just wanted to,
Really, truly.
just making sure.
All right. So I would like you first to know, if you haven't heard, vaccines are being distributed around the United States. Healthcare workers and those at extremely high risk are being vaccinated around the United States for COVID-19. This is momentous. It is amazing. Under a year, vaccines went from concept to manufacture to delivery, and hopefully we will see things really improving over the next several months. But this is really great news. We went from last week kind of fingers crossed that the FDA would give an emergency use authorization to Pfizer. And oh, yes, they did on a weekend night, no doubt. And then Monday morning, the first injections began. Vaccines are out. And now the big decisions are going to be who's going to get which vaccines and when. That's the really big question moving forward. The Pfizer vaccine so far is the only vaccine that has been given emergency use authorization. Moderna's next in line. We can probably be certain that Oxford AstraZeneca's vaccine, their adenovirus vaccine, will be next up after that. And then there are a suite of other types of vaccines and that are made with different strategies. And also, nasal sprays are coming up. This is a big question, and a friend of mine brought it up on Facebook this weekend. Since this is a respiratory disease, why are we getting a muscle shot for the vaccine? So to answer that question, number one is that the intramuscular injections tend to lead to a stronger systemic immune response. And so your body, your whole body, is going to be immune and able to fight it off, fight a virus off or an invader off more effectively. However, there's this question about the nasal mucosa and the respiratory tract. So this is a respiratory disease. If your body itself is going to be good at fighting things off, but your nose is the first line of defense, shouldn't we really be focusing on your nose and your respiratory tract? There are very few inhalable vaccines. We do have a flu mist. There is a flu nasal spray that you can inhale, and that was one that was worked on very hard. The company that did bring that flu nasal spray to the market is also working on a COVID-19 vaccine, and it is, I believe it's on its way to clinical trials now. There are some other researchers who just published in Cell this week about a new methodology to create inhalable nasal spray vaccines. And they hope that it will not just create a COVID-19 vaccine, but eventually vaccines that will be highly effective against all respiratory diseases. Anything that will attack you through your nose or your lungs, that these inhalables will give first line of defense priority to your respiratory system, and then that will then lead to systemic immunity. These researchers think that instead of multiple shots, you'll be able to go get one nasal spray sniff and you'll be good to go. Researchers in Spain just started a clinical trial. There's another clinical trial in the UK for nasal spray vaccines for COVID-19. So if you are afraid of needles, there might be something on its way for you in the near future, which is pretty cool. And then beyond that, inhalable antibodies are moving forward. There's a company just published in bioRxiv their research on inhalable antibodies. And the antibodies would be neutralizing antibodies, the kind of thing that your body would produce. But instead of your body producing it, you'd have a daily nasal spray that you would sniff in the morning, and it would stay within your nasal mucosa and within your respiratory tract, protecting you and neutralizing any COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 virus that enters your respiratory airways. And so it would be a preventative as opposed to a vaccine preventative, but the kind of thing that you could take on a daily basis if you are unable to get the vaccine for some reason. So this is a different direction that people are looking. AstraZeneca, and there's another question that people have been asking, which I think is a really great question. It's like, well, what if, I'm supposed to go get these 2 shots? These vaccine, you get 1 shot, you wait a month, you come back and get another shot. But what if they run out of the kind of vaccine that you got? Can I get another one of the vaccines? And will that work just as well? Can we mix and match vaccines and doses? Nobody knows this yet, but AstraZeneca is partnering with Gamaleya, the Russian company that is producing the Russian adenovirus-based vaccine, and they are going to test this question as to whether or not you can take the AstraZeneca virus and the Gamaleya the AstraZeneca vaccine and the Gamaleya vaccine, and I'm not sure about the timing of it, whether those 2 shots would be the exact same time, but whether that would challenge your immune system enough to create the kind of immune response that would be efficacious in protecting you from COVID-19.
So of course, my knee-jerk reaction was like, no, don't do that. That seems wrong. Obviously, that's not going to work. And then, of course, my actual scientific part of my brain was like, oh, wait, if they're supposed to work the same way, if they're 2 vaccines that are using the same mechanism, why couldn't you mix them?
Why couldn't you? Right. So AstraZeneca, Oxford AstraZeneca uses an adenovirus vector, and it's the same adenovirus for both of the 2 doses. The Gamaleya vaccine uses 2 different adenovirus vectors. They're using the same spike protein as the actual thing that your body is going to react to. The adenovirus is just the vector to get it into your cells. Why not? Mm-hmm. And so we don't want people trying this on their own, but I think it's very exciting to see that these companies are thinking in this direction, and they're thinking about it in terms of potentially the scarcity issue of, will there be enough doses of vaccines to get to everybody who needs them at all times? But the other side of it is also, can you get people to come to both visits to get the 2 doses? And if you can do both of them with this mix and match in one sitting, that could potentially solve a whole bunch of problems. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, and I'll say just probably what Justin would say. He stepped out for a second, but the good news is all this stuff is in the works, but it doesn't mean anything if you go out right now and get sick. So
you're right.
It's the home stretch. This is what it means. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Stay home. Don't do anything risky, because pretty soon you could be vaccinated and do all of the things. So you just have to hold on long enough to be able to get the vaccine and to not already be in the ICU. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the bottom line, really. Mm-hmm. We need to stay healthy long enough to get a vaccine. We need to stay healthy long enough to stay out of the ICU. All these things work together. Everyone keep it up. The holidays, we can make it through. I know that in the UK, they're talking about relaxing some precautions over the Christmas holiday. Maybe keep your Christmas small still. Don't take advantage of relaxation. Just take advantage. My perspective on this year's winter holiday is, for the first time ever, I don't have to drive to all the family. Yes. And I don't have to host any of the family. I get a very quiet holiday, and it's going to be very nice. I'm looking on the bright. I am Miss Brightside here. That is for sure.
Send your family the presents and open your presents together over a video call, and then you have the whole rest of the day to yourself.
To read those books, to go for a long walk outside. Yeah. It's going to be great. Yes, it's going to be fantastic. All right. That was enough COVID for one show. It really, really was. So we're going to move on forward. thank you so much for being a part of This Week in Science. Thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing us into your lives. If you want to help Twist grow, tell a friend to subscribe today. That would help a lot. We are coming back right now with that special part of the show that we know and love as the Panda Squirrel Poo Corner. No, wait. Blair's Animal Corner.
With Blair.
She loves our creature, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. You want to hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels.
What you got, Blair?
Oh my goodness. I have a tail.
Whoa, wow.
What?
I mean,
Have you
never
always
noticed.
had a tail?
I have a tail.
Never noticed.
T-A-L-E.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh,
Spiders in space. So
Spiders
did
in-
we
spiders
did,
in-
did you both know that there are arachnauts on our planet? There's
Wait.
spiders who their entire job is to go to space someday.
I did not know this.
Yes. So this is something that NASA has worked on for a while. Wanted to see how spiders act in zero gravity. In 2008, it was all part of something related to inspiring middle schoolers to do science. I don't know. But they took specimens
Do we
and they
need a
flew
reason?
them to the International Space Station. But chaos ensued. So a spider managed to break out of his storage chamber
Because,
into
of course.
the main chamber. So it was double containment, at least, into the main chamber. So there was a main spider that they were trying to get to build webs in zero gravity. And then they had a backup spider. The backup spider got into the main chamber with the main spider, and they just made a mess, basically.
wow.
So that experiment out the window. They couldn't open the chamber for safety reasons, obviously, because if the spider actually got out onto the space station, that would be.
That's what I thought had happened when you
Yeah,
said
yeah.
it escaped its containment. I immediately was like,
yeah. Anyway, so that was a bust. Not to mention, they brought flies up for food, and they reproduced more quickly than they thought they would in space. And over time, the larva crawled out of the breeding container onto the floor of the case into the experimental chamber. And after 2 weeks, they could not even see the spiders because there was so much fly larva. So anyway, in general,
Whoa.
they learned some things in 2008. So then in 2011, they brought 4 spiders of the same species. 2, they flew to the ISS in separate habitats. 2 stayed on Earth in separate habitats so that they could compare and contrast how they built webs in zero G and in just norm
the same
Earth.
container.
Yeah, so they wanted to have these identical conditions. But alas, there was another problem. This
Oh, no.
this experiment turned out okay overall, but they thought they were bringing 4 females into the study. But spiders are very hard to sex when they're juveniles. And so unfortunately, 2 of them ended up being male. But one of them was on the space station.
Oh, perfect.
and one of them was on Earth. So
Oh, the luck.
okay, great. So our variables are still controlled. That's fantastic. And so then they were able to go ahead with the experiment. And this is actually what this is about. So they were able to analyze the symmetry of spider webs and the orientation of those webs, about 100 spider webs, using 14,500 images. So they could use all sorts of analysis to figure out kind of the difference between these two. Basically, they wanted to see if these webs had similar properties or different properties like they do in gravity. So first of all, on Earth, spiders build asymmetrical webs with the corner towards the upper edge, which once I read it, I was like, oh yeah. And when resting, spiders pretty much always sit with their head downwards because that's how they can move quickest to prey, the direction of gravity. So when they looked at all of these images, they found that webs built in zero gravity were indeed more symmetrical than those spun on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Their center was closer to the middle. The spiders did not always keep their heads downwards. But
That makes sense. Oh, there's a but. I mean, I was going to say
but.
that it makes sense that they wouldn't always keep their head downwards, because really what is down in microgravity?
And then the symmetry kind of makes sense, because if they're building it out in a symmetrical way, it's gravity that's distorting the web ultimately.
Yeah.
Right. So this is where it gets interesting, though. They had on their hands another confounding variable they did not think about that actually created an interesting discovery. There were lamps. And what they found was that it made a difference whether the spiders built their webs in lamplight or in the dark. When they were built in lamplight, they were asymmetrical as terrestrial webs, orienting the center of the web towards the light and angling their body away from the light. So basically they were treating the light source like
bait.
No, they were treating the light source like the sun, basically. So it was like, yeah, so it gave them an idea. They figured away from the light was down. So first of all, they were very fortunate that the lamps happened to all be attached at the top of the chambers, and they didn't just kind of put them where they fit, because if they were all over, they would have had no idea, or they would have had to do all of this again. But so they were all placed in the same place. So that gave them this clue that the lamps had this impact. So the spiders rested in arbitrary orientations when the light was turned off, but then when it was on, they used it as an aid when gravity was absent. So, of course, having a backup system for gravity in general seems surprising for a species that has only ever lived on Earth. Why would you have a backup system for lacking gravity? It doesn't make any sense, but they're using light as this backup system for orientation. The only hypothesis that researchers threw in here is that their sense of position could become confused when they're building a web. The organ responsible for their orientation sense registers the relative position of the front body to the back. And during construction, those two body parts are constantly moving around. So it's possible that the orientation that they could be getting from gravity is out of whack because they're just spinning all over the place making this web. And so using the light might be their secondary source. Now, this is totally not yet tested. No, it's just a theory here based on what we have, because otherwise, why would they have a backup to gravity?
But this was only in the 0G that the lamp affected. It wasn't on Earth.
Not
so that's
that
a
can
good
be controlled
question,
for, right?
Yeah. So I think that that probably is a good next step here, would be to mess with light orientation on Earth. But my understanding is that gravity is the main pusher for that.
So because here's if I'm thinking like a spider, which I don't often, but in this case I'm going to throw myself out there. I'm going to be a spider, and I got a light source, be it the sun, be it a lamp, be it a street light, be it a porch light, whatever it is. I'm going to want to orient the center of my web towards the center of that thing. And I want to be on the business side, which is where the bugs are going to be heading towards that light source, which is opposite from where that light is, so that I can be ready to pounce on things as they head towards the light source and get caught in the web. And it's just, maybe I'm just thinking like an urban spider versus a country spider. but that's
city spider, country spider.
Yeah.
I think that's not my understanding. My understanding is that spider webs are pretty universally upper is where that kind of center of the web is. So the other kind of weird thing here is that there are spiders that build their webs in the dark. So,
right.
When you're talking about earth-dwelling spiders, there are some that don't appear to use the sun at all.
But orb spiders do, and they don't use the sun. I mean, they obviously do, but we know that they build their webs during the day, and then they eat them at night, and then they build a new one the next day. So circadian rhythms seem to be very important to this type of spider.
Yes. And yeah, I did not mention, yes, it was orb weavers that were part of it. Golden silk orb weavers. Just the best and most terrifying spider web makers, because the thing about orb weavers,
they're beautiful.
They're beautiful. They're terrifying. They're really good at making webs that are invisible because they take them down every night and rebuild them every day. And so there's no detritus on there. So you could walk face first into an orb weaver web, which I have almost done. I don't like it. But anyway, they might be using light as well as gravity. Anyway, moving on.
Oh, Blair. Orb weavers are beautiful and wonderful.
Oh my God. Okay.
Just let them build all across the front of your house.
No.
Yes. Just go outside with a stick in the morning.
I don't know.
I never left again.
I don't know what kind of spiders it is, but there's I think they're field spiders of some sort that build all sorts of big spider webs out there in the fields. And there's a certain time of year when we'll get like a decent wind. And I think it's in the spring or the fall, some in between time. But all of a sudden, it can occasionally start raining spider webs in town. Well, they'll just be drifting down. He's like, "What is that? Is it a plastic bag floating there?" No, it's a big spider web.
Oh, but why?
Because they get lifted. They've laid them out over the farmland, and then the wind comes, picks them all up drops them down again. It's kind of fun.
No, it's okay. Okay, so let's talk about fish on their AM radio. This is
the story I wanted to hear first. What?
Yeah, it's a stretch. I was using some flowery language, but this is electric fish from Brazil's Amazon rainforest. And this is research from the New Jersey Institute of Technology looking at the Brazilian Amazon basin and the way that electric fish communicate. This is the first time ever that electric fish have been captured in the wild in caves communicating. So this is some brand new information here. So they actually can communicate over long distances, and they actually do liken it to AM radio. This is why I use that whole descriptor there. I'll explain why in a second. This is looking at cave-adapted glass knife fish. It has about 300 living members that we know of, the whole species, and has evolved from surface-dwelling relatives. So not that they live on land, but they live in water still, they're fish. But they're up top. They're in the sun. They're not inside a cave where it's pitch dark. And so it looks like these cave-dwelling fish have sacrificed their eyes and their pigmentation, as many animals who live in the dark do, but they have gained more powerful electric organs to enhance the way that they sense prey and communicate with each other, which is where this gets really interesting. They analyzed the fish's electric-based communication and behavior. The way they did that is they placed electrode grids throughout the fish's water habitats to record measure the electric fields generated by each individual fish. Then the team analyzed the fish's movements and electricity-based social interactions. They were able to track more than 1,000 electrical-based social interactions over 20-minute-long recordings taken from both surface and cave fish populations so they could compare and contrast. And they discovered hundreds of specialized long-distance exchanges. They are really talking back and forth. To me, it almost sounds more like a CB radio in a truck. So of the nearly 80 species of cave fish known today that have evolved from surface-dwelling fish, all have developed sensory enhancements of some sort. But this is definitely a first, is this enhanced electricity for communication over wavelengths. So it's also partially potentially because even the water itself in the Amazon River is very murky. And so the surface dwellers might already have some of this technique already, which is why it was so easy for the cave fish to kind of augment and turn up the capabilities of this particular skill. And so they can communicate in absolute darkness. through their electric fields. It's pretty wild. So this is actually, as I mentioned, it's the first time that they've been able to continuously monitor cave fish in their natural settings. And so this was very cool to see them outside of the lab. But it seems like the strengths of the electric discharges in the cave fish were about 1.5 times greater than those in the surface. So definitely augmented. And they can go, where was it? They're only like 10 centimeters long, but they can go insane lengths considering that. They can go meters. They can go meters at a time with one electric communication, even though they're only 10 centimeters long, these little fishies. So they can detect prey, they can communicate with each other, and they have variable electric fields. So that's kind of what they do. The wavelengths change.
So now we guys just kind of know what they're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. We have to decode it for sure.
So then, okay, so this already starts making me think, like, is this happening other places?
Yeah, I would say yes.
So sharks have, right? They have, like, this ability to at least sense
electric signals, yeah.
Electric signals.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they're able to produce them in a way that they can see what another shark is doing some distance away.
Yeah, I mean,
or how a shark is feeling.
Is this a whole secret fish ESP world that we're just?
It's possible. My understanding is that the shark electromagnetic senses is pretty much limited to the electric signal that a heart would give off. It's pretty different from this kind of AM band that they're talking about here, but it's possible. I mean, if the mechanics exist, why not? Yeah, it seems like quite the cacophony. One of the researchers said, quote, "This is the first time we've been able to continuously monitor the behavior of any cave fish in their natural setting over days. We've gained great insight into the nervous system and specialized adaptations for cave life, but it's just as exciting to learn how sociable and chatty they are with each other. It's like middle school," is what Daphne Soares from the New Jersey Institute of Technology says.
I mean, that really does get at, these are interactions between individuals and what is going on there. And
what are they talking about?
Yeah, we think it's all just being quiet down there in the cave. Nope. There's all sorts of chit chat going on.
Lots of chit chat.
I love it. Fish talk. They talk a lot.
They sure do.
This is This Week in Science. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you are able, we would appreciate your support. We appreciate your support in listening to us. But if you can, head to twist.org and click on one of the links to donate to TWIS, especially during this holiday giving season. We now at Patreon have annual memberships, and you can choose between PayPal donations or joining our Patreon community. The links are available at twist.org. Click on the Patreon link to make your donation choice, and $10 or more per month. You will be thanked by name at the end of the show, if that's what you wish. We really do appreciate all of your support, and we need your support to keep going, to keep running this ship, and also to keep trying to spread the curiosity and sanity and science that we appreciate so much. Thank you for your support. All right, let's come back now. Justin, it's your turn to tell some stories.
Oh, no. Okay, I don't know if I have any more. Oh, wait, yes. Stop blaming the Mongols. Everything wasn't their fault.
Okay.
I mean, there's some things.
What?
Some things, Genghis, I don't even know.
Genghis Khan and the Mongol hordes.
Yeah, they get a lot of flack.
Destruction.
Well, actually, they were not that destructive if you just, conceded defeat.
Right, and then if you
conceded defeat, they're like, okay, keep your religion and everything. We'll go around you, and you can be part of the community. If you didn't, though, if you showed resistance, they just leveled the town. So there's, bad. If you
with the good.
aren't a Mongol. But there was one...
What are people blaming the Mongols for? I want to know what you're talking about.
For a long time, they've been blamed for the destruction of Central Asia's river civilizations. These are ancient civilizations that happen to have a couple of rivers, which when you're starting out a civilization from scratch, access to water, lots of it, is a huge benefit. It's one of these hubs where agriculture can get started for the first time. This new technology requires the bandwidth of access to water. So centuries of booming civilization. Then the Mongols invade, and suddenly after that, nothing. That whole area falls apart. And for a long time, they have blamed the Mongols for somehow mismanaging or ruining the economy or something. Turns out, no, actually climate change at the time had dried up those rivers so that they weren't as lush. And so this infrastructure of lots of people who had made their livelihoods through agriculture, much of it through ancient irrigation networks, drier conditions looks like are the real cause. This is research led by the University of Lincoln, UK. They reconstructed the effects of climate change on floodwater farming in the region and found decreasing river flow was equally, if not more important, for the abandonment of these previously flourishing city-states than the arrival of the Mongol horde.
So climate change.
Climate change. Worse than the Mongol horde.
Wow.
I think that's the
take-home message there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was a region that had been pillaged and plundered and overtaken and changed governments and religions like many times previously. And then specifically, the last one holding the bag was the Mongols, and everything went to silt. But apparently it's because the climate change had taken place. Regional climate change had led to drier conditions and ruined the flood irrigation. I don't know if it's still really irrigation if you're just flooding. I guess that's, whatever works. And then my last story tonight, hey, there's a challenge to dark matter being a thing that's important. This is an international group of scientists. This is from Case Western Reserve University astronomy chair Stacy McGough has published research contending that a rival idea to dark matter hypothesis more accurately predicts a galactic phenomenon that appears to defy classic rules of gravity. So astrophysicists say because this is significant because it further establishes the hypothesis called modified Newton dynamics, aka MOND, or modified gravity, as a worthwhile explanation for cosmological dilemma that galaxies appear to buck the long accepted rules of gravity traced to Sir Isaac Newton in the late 1600s. So, according to this, for decades, we've measured more gravitational pull in space than we think should be there. There's not enough visible or known matter to account for all the gravity, thus the dark matter. Dark matter proponents theorize that most of the known universe is actually made up of a material that doesn't interact with light, making it invisible. So if we can't see it, it's not there, except we can see the effects through gravity, so that matter must be there to account for those effects that we see in the gravitational pull amongst galaxies. And that's a popular thing that we talked about quite a bit on this show. MOND theory, counter-explanation, introduced by physicist Mordechai Milgram from Weizmann Institute, Israel, in the early 1980s, says this gravitational pull exists because the rules of gravity are slightly altered. Instead of attributing the excess gravitational pull to an unseen, undetectable dark matter, MOND suggests that gravity at low accelerations is stronger than would be predicted by a pure Newtonian understanding. In addition, MOND makes a bold prediction. The internal motions of an object in the cosmos should not only depend on the mass of the object itself, but also the gravitational pull from all other masses in the universe. The external field effect is reaching out to everything. Which is sort of interesting because it's starting to sound like what quantum is sort of doing when they're trying to describe, every bit of particles. Actually, you have to spread it out across the entire universe once you get small enough to see where it is. Milgram said the findings, if robustly confirmed, would be the smoking gun, proving that galaxies are governed by modified dynamics rather than obeying the laws of Newton and of general relativity. So there was 150 galaxies in this test, which is a small sample size, considering there are billions and billions and billions. But still, their findings are published in the Astrophysical Journal. You can go look at it there. The external field effect is a unique signature of Mond that does not occur in Newton-Einstein gravity, McGaugh says. This has no analogy in conventional theory with dark matter. Detection of this effect is a real head-scratcher. Team of 6 astrophysicists and astronomers includes lead author Che and other contributors from the United Kingdom, Italy, and the United States. This is Che. I have been working under the hypothesis that dark matter exists. So this result really surprised me. Initially, I was reluctant to interpret our own results in favor of Mond, but now I cannot deny the fact that the results, as they stand, clearly support Mond rather than dark matter hypothesis. Yeah. Group analyzed 153 rotational curves of disk galaxies as part of their studies. The galaxies were selected from the Spitzer Photometry and Accurate Rotation Curves Spark database created by another collaborator. In addition, they also had, this is University of Oxford was involved. This is Case Western. This is a big group of people from big universities. This is not an outsider crackpot hypothesis, one-off physicist who's got this interesting math that may not have been looked at yet. This is a pretty decent group who are jumping in to this study that's got this conclusion. Lely, I don't know where they're from, but they say because the external field effect on rotation curves is expected to be very tiny, we spent months checking various systematics. In the end, it became clear we had a real solid detection.
Yeah, so it's either a real solid detection that pushes dark matter out, or maybe there's some combination, or this has been an ongoing debate for decades. So it'll be really interesting to see how the astronomical community really talks about this paper and where this paper ends up going now that these results are out. What I find interesting, they've got, when they're looking at the very, very gravitationally, these galaxies that are around a lot of other stuff, and there's a lot of gravitational stuff going on, they're really detecting at high sigma value. They're like, yes, this works, the gravitational stuff. And the average overall is 4 sigma according to their paper. And that's pretty good. 4 sigma, it's no 6 sigma, but 4 sigma.
4 is better. The lower the number is the better, isn't it?
No, the higher.
Is it the higher? I thought it was one of those weird
6
lower
sigmas
numbers.
No.
I thought you wanted the least number of sigmas. Anyway,
no.
This is a quote from McGaugh here, who kind of sums up what you're sort of saying. I came from the same place as those in dark matter community. It hurts to think that we could be so wrong. And by hurts, it's not like pride. It hurts is, oh my gosh, we spend a lot of time.
But that's what science is. You have to do all the things.
You have to be wrong.
You have to do all the things. Yeah. You have to do it to find out
you
that
have
you're
to
wrong.
lose a spider in the space station to understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it says, Milgram predicted this over 30 years ago with Mond. No other theory anticipated the observed behavior.
Well, let me take you to some studies that are pretty cool, not necessarily right or wrong, but kind of awesome. Researchers publishing in the journal Physical Review Letters they've decided to talk about making neuromorphic chips with magnetic material This is very, very exciting, this paper of theirs. These researchers are at Helmholtz-Zentrum Dresden, at Dresden-Rossendorf, the HZDR. They've demonstrated a new approach to neuromorphic hardware. So far, it's all been run on traditional processors, but these researchers have a new approach. Targeted magnetic waves generated and divided in micron-sized wafers. Wafas. These little tiny wafas. They are a disk of iron nickel. It's just a few microns wide. There's a gold ring around the disk, and then gigahertz alternating current gets flushed through it. When it flows through, microwaves get emitted, and then the disk elicits spin waves. And the researchers say the electrons in the iron nickel exhibit a spin, a sort of whirling on the spot, rather like a spinning top. They use magnetic impulses to throw the electron top slightly off course. And this is a disturbance that then gets passed on, because if you can imagine a bunch of spinning tops, and few of them get disturbed, they're going to bump into the things next to them and the things next to them. And so this disturbance will get transmitted through the material. And this is the spin wave getting transmitted like a wave through the material. And this can be used to transport information. So this group that's working on this chip discovered that the spin waves generated in this magnetic field can be split into different waves, 2 different waves. And the researchers say so-called nonlinear effects are responsible for this. They are only activated when the irradiated microwave power crosses a certain threshold. And this is the point at which it becomes interesting, because like neurons, when a threshold is crossed, that's when you can activate an action potential in a neuron. So this is really an interesting parallel to how real neurons work. And the researchers now are trying to determine how they can control these split spin waves and use them to basically create a neuromorphic chip that could act in a way that the brain works. Yeah, it could deal with situations. These neuromorphic computers could process more information, more brain-like, set up in a system, a network. The neuromorphic chips all together in a network could act like a brain, more like a human brain, and process information in a very networked way and process large amounts of information at once, very much like a human brain.
That's frightening.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, I think it's a really fun advancement to be able to develop a technology that has these parallels to how the human brain works. Because as we try and create artificial technology, as we try to create technologies that require more processing power, multiple parallel streams, and crossover between those streams, intercommunications, very networked manner, we know the human brain is an efficient design. It could lead a lot of the computing designs of the future. Mm-hmm. Fancy fun times.
Yeah, Skynet, here we come. But, that's the thing. You're almost saying we're going to take we're going to create a very powerful genius. Into whose hands we're going to place that, we don't know. That's kicking the can down to the future. Some future despot or collection of well-meaning researchers will have access to this, but we're going to create it anyway. Because why not?
Because science.
Because science.
Science.
It's one of the few places where I'm like we're talking earlier about all the faces emoting similarly, emotively. Boy, that can be misused with the amount of facial recognition software that's available in despoty countries or in highly corporate capitalistic societies. Either way.
Yeah, I mean, taking that facial recognition technology, I mean, this is not neuromorphic chips, but if you've got neuromorphic chips running AIs that are doing the facial recognition and potentially crowd control, and they're looking for people's emotions to determine whether or not people are ready to riot, or are they having a really good time,
or
what is the
more
prevailing
insidious,
emotion? Yeah.
You take a selfie with your phone, and it decides that, oh, you look a little sad today. You could use a purchase that makes a purchase comfort thing at the tune of about $300 if we pick the right item. Like, this is, and then suddenly that's your ad. Like, hey, feel better with this new winter coat that's going to make you feel way more comfortable. Or buy
My Google Assistant really wants to know me. I don't want my Google Assistant to know me as much as it wants to.
Yeah.
Make my life easier.
I'm so looking forward to the as much as I am tied to technology constantly. There's going to be someday I'm just going to go straight John Savage, cut the cord, run to the wilderness, and just not come back. I'll just be done with all of you. I just won't come back.
He went to the forest, everyone. He will not be on. He's gone to the land. He will not be on the podcast again.
Yeah, enjoy your Soma. I've took some with me just to ease my transition. But until then.
Well, one of the things about being human is that we not just our facial emotions, we have this amazing sense of touch. And what is it that allows us to have this sense of touch that we have? What is it?
Nerves, brains.
Nerves, right? Nerves and brains. Exactly. You've got our sensory system that allows us.
Right. Yeah.
But
that's why I can't feel in my fingertips. Is because I got some nerves damaged.
By a weasel.
In your fingertips, there are bare nerve endings. There are little nerve endings that detect temperature. There are voltage gated channels that help it detect acidity. There are burning. There are also these capsules, the Meissner corpuscles at the end of some of our sensory nerves that we know are involved in allowing us to feel very fine vibrations. And the very fine vibrations can help you determine the feeling of a slightly rough surface versus a very smooth surface, whether or not something is actually vibrating beneath your fingers. To be able to feel these things, we have very, very fine resolution thanks to our sense of touch. And the most interesting thing is that for years we've been like, yes, the Meissner corpuscles and the nerves, these are the things that allow us to touch and allow us to feel the touch. There we go. Thank you, nerves.
Uh-oh. I'm sensing there's more to this story.
But it goes deeper. Yes. It's all because of a protein. Not just the nerves, but a protein called usherin. Usherin is essential for our sense of touch. It is located in these Meissner corpuscles. Researchers at not UC Berkeley. Nope. I was going to say the wrong thing. But this team at the Max Delbruck Center for Molecular Medicine, led by Gary Lewin, they did this study to figure out exactly what was at the core of our sense of touch using patients who have what's called Usher syndrome. Usher syndrome can affect multiple sensory systems, blindness, deafness, and the inability to sense vibration in the fingertips are some of the traits of people who have Usher syndrome. They recruited patients who have the specific kind of Usher syndrome that can't feel vibrations in their fingertips. And then they measured how well these patients versus controls were able to sense pain, temperature, and vibrations in their fingertips at 10 hertz and 125 hertz. And this is basically mimicking, like I said, touching a rough surface versus a slightly rough surface. And these patients did just great at feeling pain, at feeling the change in temperature, but they were 4 times less likely to pick up on those 125 hertz vibrations and 1.5 times less likely to detect the 10 hertz vibrations. So then they were like, okay, something really is going on with Usher, with these Usher patients. Okay, we know that this is a mutation in the gene responsible for the protein usherin. So they did the same study in mice that had this gene that's called USH2A, or did not have the gene. They had mice that had the USH2A taken out. Rodents were great at the temperature and the change in the pain. Mm-hmm. Mice with USH2A were better at detecting the vibrations than those without it. So this is really pinpointing that usherin is responsible for the sense of vibratory touch in the Meissner corpuscle. They found usherin in and around the Meissner corpuscle when they went looking for it. Usherin's in all sorts of other places, but specifically, they found it in this Meissner corpuscle. And so this is something that is newly understood. It gives a new nuance to how we understand our sense of touch, and the fact that there's this protein that's involved that helps transmit the vibrations to our nerves in some way. So what other elements are involved that we don't know about?
Yeah. So I might have like a lot of this. You know, like when you get a cup of coffee and you put the sleeve on it.
You think you have extra usherin? Is that what you're saying?
And you put that sleeve on the cup of coffee so you can hold it. I still can't hold it. It's still too hot for my hand. I have to have them ice down the coffee.
But it doesn't have anything to do with temperature.
Okay, so it's just the vibration. So I got to find the temperature
You're
thing.
temperature sensitive.
Yeah. I'm super temperature sensitive. Like I have to wait till the thing cools to below room temperature. Otherwise, I feel like I'm burning my mouth. And I can't even I'm like grabbing 2 of those and a napkin to carry my cup of coffee out. No, it's really like nobody else. I noticed that no one else is having this problem around me, but I just can't even hold on to the thing because it's so hot. Anyway. But it's not the usherin. That's just a vibration sensor. There might be some other protein.
Yes, usherin is going to be involved in a lot of other systems, but specifically they have
temperature was not one of them.
Temperature was not one of them, but vibrations specifically vibrations in our sense of touch. So the next time you run it's proteins all the way down. Yeah. The next time you rub your finger over a surface and can feel the roughness of a surface, say, thanks for ushering that in.
Do you have a next story I can transition to real quickly?
It is the end of the show. As we come to the end of the show, I do want to remind everyone that we will not be back next week for the podcast. For anyone who's here live next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific time, we're going to have a live holiday party.
It's the 23rd of December, is that correct?
Yeah, 23rd of December. This is a company party, so if you've got, family, kids, we can bring our Christmas treats, bring your eggnog, and maybe we'll sing some Christmas carols, or I don't know. If you have any questions, or if for us, if you have any ideas for our top 11 stories of 2020, which will be our last show of the year at the end of the month, the last Wednesday of December, the 30th, we will have our top 11 stories of 2020. If you have recommendations, you can email me at Kirsten@thisweekinscience.com, or you can leave us a message on our Facebook page. But I think that does it. Do you both have any holiday messages before we say goodnight?
Merry Twistmas, everyone!
And to all a good night.
Thank you all for joining us so much. We do hope that you enjoyed the show. There are some calendars left, so if you are interested in a calendar, head over to twist.org and click that horny frog to get yourself a calendar for 2021. Shout outs to Fada for helping with show notes and social media. Gord, thank you for manning the chat room. And Identity4, thank you for recording the show once again. Really appreciate all your help. And very much thank you to our Patreon sponsors and the Burroughs Welcome Fund for their generous support. Thank you too. Woody MS, Andre Bassett, Chris Wozniak, Dave Bunn, Vegard, Chefstad, Hal Schneider, Donathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, John Scioli, Guillaume, John Lee, Ali Coffin, Gaurav Sharma, Shubru, Sarah Forfar, Darwin Hannon, Donald E. Mundis, Stephen Alberon, Daryl Myshak, Stu Pollock, Andrew Swanson, Fred S104, Sky Luke, Paul Ronovich, Bentley the Translator, Big Nell, Kevin Reardon, Noodles, Jack, Brian Carrington, Matt Bass, Joshua Fury, Shauna Nina Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflow, Gene Tellier, Steve Leisman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Richard, Brandon Minish, Melizond, Johnny Gridley, Kevin Railsback, Flying Out, Richard Porter, Christopher Dryard, Mark Nasaros, Artyom, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Free Melania, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul, Matt Sutter, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Mountain Sloth, Jim Drapeau, Sarah Chavez, Alex Wilson, John Ratnaswamy, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, E.O., Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Steve DeBell, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul Stanton, Paul Disney, Patrick Pecoraro, Ben Rothig, Gary S., Tony Steele, Ulysses Adkins, Brian Codron, Jason Roberts, and Dave Friedel. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. And if you're interested in supporting us on Patreon, head over to twist.org and click the Patreon button. This'll be super easy. And on next week's show,
we will be back.
Yeah, we're just
Again.
having a party. We're gonna have a party. That's right.
Is it still the regular time? Wednesday, 8 p.m.?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Wednesday, 8 p.m. This is one not for the podcast audience. This is just for the live streaming YouTubering type peoples who might happen to pop in 8 p.m. Pacific time or 5 a.m. Central European time.
Yeah, but regardless, if you want to listen to us as a podcast when you do the real show, just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe as well.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to stories will be available via our website, www.twist.org.
You can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at kirsten@thisweekinscience.com. Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or Blair, me, at blairbaz@twist.org. Just be sure to put twist, TWIS, in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into a pile of mond.
You can also Mongol us on Twitter, where we are at Twist Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week for our fun holiday thing. Not here in 2 weeks. And we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer, and it shouldn't be news, that what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. Jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say, and if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 Got a laundry list of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. So how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say, and if you've learned anything from the words that we've said, then please just remember it's all in your head. 'Cause it's This Week in Science, This Week in Science, This Week in Science, 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 This Week in Science, This Week in Science, This Week in Science, 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 This Week in 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 Science.